tackle. And if that is true, then we have some, I would say, serious issues at hand, because that would definitely mean that the conventional policies that we have been, policy responses that we have been following, say for instance, the PDS, food stamps, subsidies, cash transfers, these are likely to be found insufficient. What it basically means is that we need new research, new technology, new innovative solutions, and our chances of finding these solutions would be much higher if we chase those solutions collectively rather than each country fighting it out alone. So that basically means again that regional cooperation is now an absolute necessity rather than just one of the options, probably which was the case maybe 10-15 years ago. Well, this is the premise where ESCAPS comes in. This is, well, being regional cooperation being our main mandate. With this idea in mind, we had an opportunity in the sub-regional office here in New Delhi to organize a policy dialogue a few years ago on regional cooperation for food security. That policy dialogue helped to come up with what we now call a 10-point agenda on regional cooperation. Some of you have participated and contributed to that process, but for the benefit of others, I'd like to briefly mention some of the main points of this 10-point agenda. One is, of course, regional cooperation for combating climate change and its impact on food security. The second one is on regional institutions. Then comes liberalization of trade in food products. Then creation of effective regional knowledge networks. Another one is on alignment of regulations, particularly on food standards, safety regulations, and so on. And finally, regional cooperation on non-agriculture sectors, including but not limited to water, energy, natural resources, and so on, which have a direct bearing on food security. After having done this exercise, our next endeavor was to relate these 10-point agenda to goal number 2 by doing a mapping exercise of how each of this 10-point agenda matches with each of the targets which are listed under goal number 2. So here we observe two things. One is that some of the targets, say for instance the target on food and seed banks, or else the target on correcting market distortions, these targets by their own language calls regional cooperation to the forefront. So there we don't have any issue of relating to regional cooperation because it's automatically they themselves call for it. In the case of other goals, other targets, even though they don't mention regional cooperation explicitly, but we found more often than not one or two of the 10-point agenda that we had listed down would serve those targets better than the alternatives which are nationalistic in nature. So after having done this a mapping exercise, the next subsequent step was to find out what are the obstacles to implement this 10-point agenda, what are the possibilities that we have in terms of realizing this 10-point agenda. So for that we embarked on a research initiative. Besides in-house research, we also could commission a series of papers. Each paper in such a manner that each paper would pick up one or two of the 10 points and then focus on issues relating to them. The result of that exercise has been highly enriching, and we managed to get a series of highly good, high quality, useful policy papers. We are happy to share that we are in a position now we are in the advanced stages of coming up with a collected volume of those papers. It's very difficult to, in fact, with limited time, it's difficult to touch upon all the rich results coming out of that paper, but I'd like to take a couple of examples which I think are worth mentioning here. The first is that a common theme coming out of these papers is that the moment we talk about addressing an issue taking the route of regional cooperation, it doesn't stop at that issue, because many issues are interrelated, and we need to apply regional cooperation to that particular cluster of issues to be, in order for it to be effective, which is evident from the case of trade. We had a paper extensively dealing with trade, which took a very peculiar angle of trade in food products. The author of that paper is here. I should acknowledge his presence, Dr. Ayan Mukherjee. His paper basically looked at food trade, and as Professor Rahman just mentioned, trade restrictions are imposed higher on food products than other products, be it tariffs or non-tariff. Still, South Asian countries are not self-sufficient in all the staples, and they are importing. So import is happening, even though there is a worry, and related imposition of trade restrictions on food products. Now, this paper, after having looked at the main staples, this paper looked at and found out that, most of the imports that are currently happening is from outside the region, while exports of the same products are taking place from other trading partners within the sub-region to rest of the world. So the paper looked at the possibility of internalizing that trade, and the paper calls that possibility as additional market access frontier. It found that the additional market access frontier, which exists in about 400 different food categories, amounts to 10 billion US dollars, while the current trade in those products is just about 2 billion. 10 billion, so we are talking about a possibility of a five-fold increase in trade. Now 10 billion is not a big number in trade, but in the context of South Asia it is, because the overall intra-regional trade is just about 25 billion in South Asia. So this is a classical case where we see that, and when we look at why trade is not happening, obviously all the reasons that Professor Rahman just mentioned come into place. It's not just about a tariff liberalization, but it's also about transport, road, rail network, border infrastructure, customs, MRAs, standards. So many areas need to be tackled together, and this is a classical example where regional cooperation should be applied on a cluster of issues. And secondly, as a cross-cutting theme across these papers, two terms often comes up. One is regional institutions, and second is technology. Regional institutions, in the context of institutions, we most often talked about are regional food bank and seed banks. But the nature of institutional requirements go much beyond that, and these papers very beautifully explain what are these requirements and how we can meet the institutional deficit. And particularly interesting is where technology interacts with the need for institutions. I had a few examples, very beautiful examples coming out of the papers, but because of time limitation, I am given just 1 minute. I'll refrain from talking about those. I'll just conclude by saying that these are only just a few glimpses from the papers, and I take this opportunity to thank the authors, the contributors of the upcoming volume. We have a number of lead authors of that volume present over here. Dr. Nagesh Kumar, our head, is not only one of the contributors but also the editor of the volume. Then we have, apart from Professor Mukherjee, we have Dr. Sachin of RIS contributing with a paper. Professor Rahman is not only contributing one but two papers to that, a theme paper and also a country position paper. And our chair himself, Dr. Suleri, is a contributor to that volume, and we hope that this volume will be yes, of course. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that. And Dr. Rehan has also contributed partly to this work. We are very thankful to all of you, and we hope that this volume will be a good value addition to the current discourse on Goal 2 in the sub-region, and we look forward to work with you all in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, George, because you acknowledged me publicly, so you got 1 minute extra. So it's 3:31. My job was to conclude this session at 3:30. So I'll hand it over to you. If you'll give me some extra time for interaction, I can take some comments. If you straightway want to go to tea break, we can go to tea break. So 5 minutes. Okay. So if we can have 3-4 interventions, just brief interventions. Please, Lee.
I must thank the panel. I think it was an excellent session with so many ideas, and thank you for sharing your views. I just want to highlight the point, if we focus on SDG 2, hunger, then shouldn't we actually talk more about moving from cereal-based food security to more balanced diet-based food security, and which is something I think very, very important now in the context of South Asia. So you talked quite a lot about the cereal trade and the deficiency and then kind of protection, but we need to actually talk also about the type of restriction there on protein, like milk, meat in South Asia, which is I think also very important. Thank you.
I didn't hear from the panel unless I missed it. Nobody spoke about this GM crops and the effect of Monsanto. Civil society is aware of it, but they are able to overcome governments. If there's any comment, or just take it for the future discussion.
Anyone from the back?
Yeah, I was just curious, like Mr. Mustafizur Rahman mentioned, and very rightly, on the sensitive list, a lot of items are from the agriculture. So what, according to you, are the reasons while we know that we are suffering from it and we all are trying for it, and what are the reasons?
Any of the ladies in the hall? Or Sachin?
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to expand what Dr. P.K. Anand was mentioning. In the study that we just finished at RIS and we got it launched, there, this team led by Dr. P.K. Anand and Mr. Krishna Kumar, they have compared various Indian states' experience. As you would agree, the midday meal scheme is a major component of food security in our region. And from that point of view, they compared what are the differences, what are the lessons that we can learn from different states. So they identified a couple of food crops which are priorities, and as Chair, you would agree, most of the multinational corporations keep on bringing in this attention of fortification and packaged food as part of the midday meal scheme. So I think the South Asian region can come together. I studied that partly in case of Nepal as part of India's partnership for the midday meal. I think it would be worth, maybe Dr. Nagesh, I think with support of UNSCAP, a regional study exclusively on midday meal scheme and drawing the lessons out of it. Thank you.
Back.
Respected sir, ma'am, my question is that how a commodity market based solution can give leverage to this food security, like commodity market based on wheat, cereal. There are many commodity markets are there. How it can help to increase the food security? Can it will be the best idea to solve the food insecurity in the South Asian country? Could you comment on that?
Any last intervention from the floor? 1 minute. Would you like to say anything?
Well, there have been no question addressed to me, but yeah, maybe.
See, on commodity markets, we are not leaving and we are not suggesting to that these commodities are left purely to the market forces. Even today, the kind of subsidies which are there and the kind of interventions, I'll give you one small example. In India, we have issued 100 million soil health cards. And the soil health card is not telling you only what is the composition of N or P or K. It goes much beyond that. Minor as well as micronutrients. So that kind of interventions are coming at next to nil cost. So these are the kind of helps which are coming, and so to assume that we are suggesting these things to be left purely to market forces is not correct. There are many other interventions which are being made or which can be conceived of. And that's why when we sit together, what's happening in another country, this is the forum to learn that and imbibe in our country.
Thank you for the floor interventions. With regard to the GM crops and Monsanto, I understand there are sensitivities, but what I, as a student of economics, my understanding is that the HYV, the high yielding variety technology, has reached its frontier in our region. I think that we have to make the next leapfrogging. Now, there are concerns, I know that, but I think that my own understanding is that we'll have to do the next lap of the journey, and a large part of that is associated with the GM technology. But there are concerns, I very well understand, so those will have to be taken into account. But I can see that South Asian agriculture is reaching a technological frontier. So that's we are seeing it in the productivity growth that